The following recording is a production of Kickin' Out at 2 in conjunction with the Retromania Pro Wrestling Podcast Network and is intended for private use only. For more information, head on over to facebook.com/Kickin' Out at 2 or our Twitter handle @Kickin' Out 2, along with searching Retromania with a W on any and all podcast platforms available to listen to archive shows such as this and all the great content of the Retromania Pro Wrestling Podcast Network. Evergreen content at your fingertips anytime at your listening pleasure. And with that being said, we thank you for listening and hope you enjoy the show.
What's up, everyone? Thank you all for pressing play, hitting download, liking, subscribing, rating, and reviewing this episode of Kickin' Out at 2. I'm your host, Dave Rosenbluth, and we got an interesting one here for you. Because this was voted by all of you, our listeners, on our social media, both Facebook and Twitter, because I refuse to call it X. The theme this year is to cover the year 2000. It's the last year where there were three major pro wrestling companies in existence. It was the last full calendar year of both WCW and ECW in existence before WCW was sold to the World Wrestling Federation in March of 2001, before ECW had shut down around that same time. And I just thought, with all the comings and goings in 2000 and so much change in wrestling, that it would be kind of fun to go back and reminisce on some of that stuff. So I put a poll up on social media, and I did not expect this episode to be what you all have chosen. But the choices were the February 21st episode of Monday Night Raw from the year 2000, the February 21st episode of Monday Nitro from that same evening, the February 23rd episode of WCW Thunder, the February 24th episode of SmackDown, ECW on TNN, and ECW Hardcore TV within that same week. I don't have the dates in front of me. But surprisingly, you all chose WCW Thunder from February 23rd, the year 2000. And I was taken aback by that. So originally, the idea was for Dennis and I to sit down and watch this episode. But unfortunately, Dennis and I had a little scheduling conflict. The weather has been not so great here in the Northeast, and we decided to reschedule, and we'll record at a later date. But I took it upon myself to go ahead and watch this episode of Thunder by myself, and I'll be honest with you, I regret it. Absolutely regret it, and you will hear why throughout the course of this recap. But go on Peacock if you want to waste an hour and 21 minutes and 6 seconds of your life. Go on Peacock, search WCW Thunder Season 3, Episode 8 from February the 23rd, 2000. If you read the caption, it says Ric Flair versus Vampiro and Sid Vicious, the World Heavyweight Champion, versus Lex Luger with Miss Elizabeth. So on paper, you would think, well, all right, that's not a bad show. Sid's a name. Luger, Ric Flair, one of the greatest of all time. Why not, Yeah. I definitely had buyer's remorse, and I'll explain. I mean, and to be quite honest with you, going back and watching this was the first time I had ever watched this, because during this period of time, 25 years ago, I was a big WWF fan. I was Attitude Era all the way, Raw and SmackDown. I mean, as much as I loved WCW, it was hard for me to watch their programming, and I didn't make time for it because it just wasn't that good. It wasn't appealing to me at the time. So, I'm guessing if you watch this, it would not be appealing to you 25 years later. I can't find somebody, or I won't find somebody that will say, oh yeah, that was a great episode of wrestling. WCW Thunder, February 23rd, 2000. You will not find that from anybody. If I find somebody, whether it's you listeners on social media, anybody that listens to this podcast, if you come back to me on social media and you say, hey Dave, I actually enjoyed that episode, I will let you pick a topic of a future episode of Kickin' Out at 2. Okay? That's if I can find you. That's if you make your way. If you creep out of the shadows and you slide my DMs, or you write on the wall on Facebook on Kickin' Out at 2, whatever you do. If you contact me and that's what you tell me, I'll let you be the one to make a decision on a future topic of an episode. So, but yeah, during this time period, didn't watch this episode. 25 years ago. It's funny. This was the week heading into the WWF No Way Out pay-per-view. This episode of Thunder took place following Super Brawl, just a couple days prior, which was headlined by Sid, Jeff Jarrett, and Scott Hall in a three-way dance for the world title. We also saw Hulk Hogan and Lex Luger taking on each other, and Ric Flair and Terry Funk in a death match, among other matches on that card. And, I watched that show recently, and not as bad as this episode of Thunder, but not by much. So heading into that No Way Out pay-per-view, which I was attending, it was taking place in my hometown of Hartford, Connecticut, which, by the way, you guys voted for it in the polls. Our next episode, you're going to listen, you're going to be indulged by my first-hand experience attending No Way Out that evening. I'll give you a full recap watching it back 25 years later, then and now. So be on the lookout for that on our next episode of Kicking Out at 2. But it's time to trudge through this episode of WCW Thunder from February the 23rd, 2000. Season 3, Episode 8 on your Peacock. The show starts with a recap from earlier in the week of the Hulk Hogan-Lex Luger Last Man Standing Steel Cage match that closed out that Nitro, which saw Ric Flair interfere, and he would whip Hulk Hogan with his weightlifting belt, which kind of implies that Hogan's going to be working with Flair moving forward. That's what everyone wanted to see, I guess, in 2000. We cut to a backstage where Commissioner Kevin Nash arrives in a wheelchair with his nurses and is confronted by WCW official Mike Graham. The nurses tell Graham he's got amnesia, but Mike reminds Nash that he's in charge of WCW and he's the commissioner. Nash, who's confused by this news, tells his ladies, "We got some commissioning to do. Take me to my office." As we cut to the opening video in Pyro with 3 count in the ring. Out comes Fit Finlay as he's set to take on Evan Courageous in a hardcore match. Typical garbage match with chairs and garbage cans and tables. 3 count would interfere at times, but it backfired. Finlay would end up cleaning house on all 3 of them, and then he would deliver a tombstone to Evan Courageous for the win. Very short match. Kind of disappointed. I was kind of hoping to see maybe Finlay, some more hardcore action with these guys, put a beat into these guys, but we didn't. So a little disappointed this didn't go on a little bit longer. Mike Tenay and Bobby Heenan are your hosts, and they run down the show as we are scheduled to see Sid Vicious taking on Lex Luger. Also on the card, Ric Flair, Buff Bagwell, and Tank Abbott all scheduled to appear. As we cut to Commissioner Kevin Nash's office, where he's asking the nurses where he is and who he is. Nash would then deliver an old Batman reference as Commissioner Gordon, the character from the Batman series. As we cut to Jeff Jarrett and the NWO in their dressing room with Mean Gene Okerlund, and Jarrett announces that he's going to be taking on Sid Vicious for the world title at the upcoming Uncensored pay-per-view. Jarrett and the Harris boys then say they plan to take over tonight en route to his WCW title victory heading into the commercial break. Back from the break, the Kid Cam, which is a gimmick that Billy Kidman has been using from time to time, is filming Buff Bagwell in a stairwell with Daphne where he's asking her out. And then he runs down David Flair, says he's, what kind of a man is he, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. And then Daphne screams in his face and runs away. I'll be honest with you, I did not understand, and I wasn't quite sure about the whole Buff being desperate to find a date thing. I mean, he was a pretty good-looking guy. I'm sure a lot of males were jealous of him, but considering, he was coming off the angle with Diamond Dallas Page and Kimberly just a month or so prior, where the angle is that Page heard a rumor that Buff was trying to get in Kimberly's pants while he was away filming a movie, and it led to a big match. I just thought it was a little strange that Buff was so desperate to find a date. The previous couple nights on Nitro, he asked out the Maestro's Old Lady Symphony. She kind of turned him down, so I don't know where they were going with it, but it was a little different for Buff, that's for sure. Ric Flair comes out carrying Hulk Hogan's weightlifting belt, and he starts to cut a promo running down the city of Reno, Nevada, where this episode of Thunder is taking place. He also brags about Luger demolishing Hulk in the cage match on Nitro a few nights prior and using the weight belt to whip Hogan. Flair then says Luger will knock down Sid to size later tonight, but then questions why he can't find someone to wrestle him. When out of nowhere comes Vampiro, who tells Flair that despite his respect for him, Flair's stuck with him tonight and they're going to have a match. Crowd's pretty into the idea. Vampiro says he doesn't want to wrestle him because he wants to kick his ass, and the match is booked for later this evening. Oh, okay. I mean, to be honest with you, Flair, Vampiro, the audience was pretty into it. Not a bad, little segment there, I must say. I think the crowd at that time was really itching to see someone new and someone fresh in that kind of a spotlight. And so Vampiro with Flair was kind of a breath of fresh air. Crowd was, like I said, into Vampiro, or maybe just into the fact it was somebody new that was in a top spot, so to speak. Mean Gene is backstage with La Parka. And he interviews with Parker, and we get an audio recording of an unusual raspy voice portraying La Parka. It's kind of like a voiceover dub with like the really bad subtitles. It was kind of a takeoff from the... it was WCW's cheap answer to Kai and Tai. If you remember Kai and Tai, Taka Michinoku, and Funaki, they would come out and they would cut a promo, and in the back, like, the words wouldn't match, the video wouldn't match the audio, and all you would hear is, indeed. This was kind of that takeoff, if you remember that, from the year 2000. It was pretty bad. Back from the commercial break, and David Flair scolding Daphne for talking to Buff. Daphne assures David that there's nothing going on and that she likes blonde boys. Then we cut to Kevin Nash in his office asking where Batman is. Yeah, this is awful. I can't believe I'm watching this. I can't believe you people actually voted for this. I'm sitting there watching this and I'm like, how is this even possible that my listeners, my audience, my followers, they would subject me to such torture? I mean, is my podcast that bad? I mean, really, is it? I mean, I know it's not great, but come on, like, did I deserve this? Anyhow, this crap continues as Nash grabs his cell phone, calling Alfred, Batman's butler, looking for Commissioner Gordon. Looking for Bruce Wayne as Commissioner Gordon. God, it gets worse. And on the other end of that phone, which kind of saved this segment, was Ralphus, Jericho's old personal security guard. Yeah, of course somebody like Ralphus would be involved in this vignette. We get Berlin out for his match, grabs the microphone from David Penzer, cuts a promo in German, then in English reminds us who he is, and runs down the city of Reno, Nevada, because apparently he didn't get the memo that was Flair's spot in the previous segment. Anyhow, La Parka's out to face him. We get a clip of Medusa dressed as La Parka from Monday Nitro involved in a segment. Berlin would jump on the attack to La Parka early on, but La Parka would gain the advantage with a Russian leg sweep, followed by a top rope corkscrew plancha for the win. Man, this was too quick for me to even care, and this just felt like they were just going through the motions. This was pretty bad. Billy Kidman and Tori Wilson are backstage as Buff confronts them over the Kid Cam, and Kidman says that his camera was stolen the other night and he did not film Buff earlier. Mean Gene backstage with Tank Abbott talking over Tank's win at Super Brawl against Big Al in the Skins match. Don't ask me about that. That was pretty bad. When he's interrupted by Vincent, Curly Bill, Shane, whatever you want to call him. Oh, wait, he's none of those, as he's now referred to himself as Mike Jones. And he challenges Tank to a match later tonight. Tank accepts and walks off. Whew, man, you know what? 25 years ago, if I had a bingo card, I wouldn't have Soul Train Jones on my WCW bingo card, that's for sure. Especially in the year 2000. Up next, Buff Bagwell and David Flair go one-on-one with Daphne in David's corner. To be honest with you, there's not much to write home about when it comes to this match until the Maestro arrives with Symphony. Daphne's on the apron with the Golden Crowbar. Buff shoots David Flair into Daphne as she falls into the arms of the Maestro onto the floor. Then Buff would nail David Flair with an inverted DDT for the win. Post-match, you'd see Buff lay waste to the Maestro to close out this segment. Again, another match that if you blink, you missed it. Tank Abbott is backstage on his way to the ring for his match as we go into the commercial break. And back from the break, we see Vampiro warming up in the backstage area as Tank Abbott makes his way out to the ring to face Soul Train Mike Jones, or Soul Man Mike Jones, or Curly Shane Bill Vincent Virgil, whatever the fuck you want to call him. Bobby Heenan on commentary would mock Mike Jones' name by saying, "Boy, that's quite the alias. Who's his brother, Tom Smith?" We got no response from Mike today, but in the Rosenbluth household, you got a one-man pop right there. Rest in peace, Bobby Heenan. You will always, even from the grave, be just as hilarious as you were alive. Man, Jones, he would take it to Tank right off the rip. Managed to spill out to the floor with some hard, stiff shots, but Tank would manage to gain the upper hand with a front face lock as Jones would fight back. Jones would then nail a sucker punch to the face, but he would turn around and pander to the crowd only to be met with a right hand shot to the jaw, knocking him out cold. Tank doesn't even wait for the referee's decision as the bell rings, and Tank Abbott is your winner. Now, considering the angle that Tank was in at this time where he was just kind of plowing through people, like within seconds, this match being so short would make sense. If the other matches weren't so short earlier in this show, this match would stand out. But this match just feels like another match, just like the rest of them. So short, quick, and not really to the point. Ric Flair's backstage, headed to the ring as we go into commercial break. And back from the break, it's Commissioner Kevin Nash in his office, when Ralphus arrives. And Nash calls him Bruce and says, "We need Batman." Ralphus asks the nurses if he got hit with a guitar. The nurses say bingo, and then Nash says B-I-N-G-O, 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 and bingo was his name. I thought these segments could only get worse, but with Ralphus involved, that actually kind of made me chuckle. Ralphus is kind of saving these segments. Up next, Vampiro versus Ric Flair. This was actually the best match of the show. This was a good back-and-forth match. The crowd was really into Vampiro. Commentary really laid out the dynamic of the veteran in Ric Flair against the young upstart in Vampiro, told a good story. Commentary really put Vampiro over as this being a golden opportunity for him in WCW. Flair would typically work the knee with Vampiro fighting back from underneath. Lex Luger and Liz would arrive at ringside. Luger would nail Vampiro with the baseball bat as Liz distracted the referee. Flair would then apply the figure four as Vampiro submits, giving Flair the win. This was a good match. I would have liked to have seen this go a little longer, to be honest with you. And actually, I wouldn't have minded this being the main event, to be perfectly honest with you. This was the most into it that the crowd was this whole time. Post-match we would see Luger and Flair beat down Vampiro with Hulk Hogan's weightlifting belt to close out the segment. Like I said, easily the best part of the show so far. This really helped Vampiro look like a credible threat, and it looked like he was moving up the ranks. This is a situation where some of this show you look at WCW's creative and you're like, wow, they're really lost. They don't know what to do here. They're just throwing mud at the wall and seeing if it's going to stick. And then there's other times where you see this situation with Vampiro and they're like, okay, they're making him into something. So, nonetheless, solid segment and best segment overall of the night. Dustin Rhodes is backstage and makes his way out as we go to commercial break. And back from the break, we see Vampiro nursing his knee backstage when Finlay would attack him from behind. Followed up by Booker and Kidman discussing strategy for their tag team match in the backstage area. We would see clips of Dustin Rhodes turning on Terry Funk from their tag match on Nitro. Dustin makes his way out to the ring with a microphone in hand. Pretty much he lashes out at the fans, explains all the tough times he's endured in the business, referencing his run as Goldust without saying Goldust because he probably would have gotten sued. How he grew up in the business and what he's had to go through, what he witnessed his father go through with Terry Funk over the years. Funk's on the big screen. He's got some words for Dustin. He pretty much runs down the family, calling them a big pile of horse crap. Dustin would then go crazy, attack some production members ringside. I don't know. This wasn't really a bad segment, but this wasn't really a good segment overall. There wasn't any explanation behind him turning on Terry Funk. But I don't know where it was leading to. I guess we're heading towards Funk and Dustin, at least in that segment. But him attacking the production guys, didn't understand that. Didn't understand what the purpose of that was. Was it to exemplify Dustin's anger towards Terry Funk because Terry Funk called his family a pile of horse crap? I don't know. But at the same time, watching it, it looked like nobody really cared either. It looked like that audience was just kind of like tuned out from it. Crowbar is backstage, heading to the ring for his match going into the commercial break. And when we come back from the break, we see WCW executive Terry Taylor backstage with referee Mickey J. And Mickey J has asked Terry Taylor to lift the suspension of that crooked referee, Slick Mark Johnson, so he can get his hands on him. Taylor would agree. So, great. Just what everybody wants. A crooked referee, another angle with a crooked referee leading to a meaningless match with another referee. Because that's what people are paying to see at this time in WCW. Up next, the artist formerly known as Prince Iakea, defending the WCW Cruiserweight Championship against Crowbar. I'll be honest with you, I don't think anyone really cared for this match. The Cruiserweight division was not at its peak at this time. They bought it. Despite the talent's efforts, this wasn't a Rey Mysterio, Billy Kidman, Juventud Guerrero, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Jericho, Cruiserweight Classic. I think this was their way of another. Let's throw mud at the wall and see if it sticks. And even with the Prince Iakea, the artist formerly known as Prince gimmick, it just wasn't very good. I wasn't into this match at all. Prince and Crowbar would make it up to the top rope and deliver a facebuster to each other. Daphne would arrive and slide into the ring to distract the Prince, while Paisley would slap Crowbar in the face. Iakea is mesmerized by her purple wig as the ladies would get into it, while Prince delivers a second rope jumping DDT for the win to retain his Cruiserweight title. Like I said, I couldn't care less for this match. This was awful. What are you people doing to me right now? My goodness. We see the Wall and Disco Inferno backstage heading to the ring for their match as we go to a commercial break. And back from the break, Mean Gene is with the WCW World Champion Sid Vicious. Sid would deliver his typical crazy man promo, hyping up his match with Luger later tonight. And we cut to Kevin Nash watching on the monitor with his nurses, and he thinks Sid is the Joker who escaped from Gotham Asylum. The nurses try to snap him out of it, but to no avail, so they decide to call Superman, since Batman is a no-show to see if he's available to help. Going back and watching this segment, if you remember this time period as a wrestling fan in WCW, this was during the period of time where this was a month removed from WCW demoting Vince Russo as head booker, and Russo went home. So at the time, J.J. Dillon and Kevin Sullivan were the ones kind of taking the reins of the booking. You would have thought that Vince Russo booked this shit. I mean, come on. This is unreal. I can't understand who thought in their right mind this was funny. And you know what's interesting about this? The irony of this is that Russo was ousted out of his position, allegedly, because his creative just wasn't... management and upper management did not see the vision that he had for his creative. But this bullshit's going to fly? I mean, really. It just was baffling to me as I went back and watched this. I was like, I can't believe that. I guess I could believe that this is WCW in a nutshell, but all right, let's move on. The Wall and Disco Inferno. Disco Inferno is seen walking backstage with the Mamalukes when they run into Lenny and Lodi, who jump them from behind, but Disco still continues his way ringside and is unaware that they were attacked, and then he realizes he's by himself. Disco grabs the mic, tries to talk himself out of the match, claims he's a manager of champions, and that the Wall had a title shot, that the Wall wasn't having any of it. The Wall would put a beating on Disco early on. Disco would manage to fight back, but it wouldn't last long as the Wall would deliver a chokeslam for the win. I'll say this: this was a small bright spot in this show. Not the fact that the Wall beat Disco Inferno, but they made the Wall look good. You know, they had some plans for him. It sounded like they saw something in him, and they wanted to continue on with that, just like they did with Vampiro. So it on one hand, it's like the ping pong of back and forth of inconsistency. One hand, it's let's have our on-screen authority figure run a wrestling show under amnesia and think he's a part of a Batman comic book. But on the other hand, we're going to take this guy named The Wall very seriously, and we're going to present him as a serious, credible force within WCW. It just, I don't understand. The booking was just so all over the place on this show. I couldn't believe it. Booker T and Kidman are headed to the ring for their tag match as we see Lex Luger with Miss Elizabeth and Mean Gene. Luger is very confident and predicts a victory over Sid, which could then put him in line for a WCW championship match. Tag team match up next is Kidman with Tori Wilson teaming with Booker versus the Harris Twins. Now, this was another really crappy booking for Booker, because Booker comes out with no music. He lost the rights to Harlem Heat, the Harlem Heat franchise. He lost his initial T. How the fuck do you lose an initial in a wrestling match? What kind of a stipulation is that? If you go back, let me refresh your memory. Booker T, Stevie Ray, Harlem Heat, one of the greatest tag teams in WCW, one of the greatest tag teams of all time. They decided to split them up a few months prior. And Booker and Stevie would have a match, and Stevie would get help from the debuting Ahmed Johnson, former WWF superstar, who would go by the name of Big T. And they would be managed by the former Clarence Mason, who was known as Jay Biggs. And apparently Clarence Mason legally was able to strip Booker of the Harlem Heat music, the Harlem Heat franchise, and his identity, as well as his initial. Now, I get it, the music, the name, but you strip somebody of an initial? If that's his name, how can you tell him he can't wrestle as that name anymore? I didn't understand that. I thought it was one of the stupidest things that I had ever seen. But they ran with it. They continued with it. Out come the Harris brothers to NWO music, because apparently they don't want that angle to die. They're holding on to this NWO by a thread with Jeff Jarrett and these two guys. I mean, come on. It's ridiculous. Just let it die. This was another match that was too short for me to care. It felt like they were actually rushing through this match. Booker, I don't even think broke a sweat when he came in for the hot tag. And the finish would come when the Harris Twins would deliver an H-bomb to Booker for the win. All right. Sid is on his way to the ring as we go into the commercial break. And back from the break is your main event. Sid Vicious, the WCW World Heavyweight Champion, taking on the Total Package, I'm Not Lex Luger, with Miss Elizabeth. Because apparently he was just the Total Package. I was referring to him as Luger. The announcer was referring to him as Luger. But then they would say, nope, he's not Luger. He's just the Total Package. Again, what's with the identity crisis here? Booker loses his T. Luger loses his Luger. What's the... Ooh, come on. How stupid is this? How stupid am I to watch this? Thank you all for voting for this, because this was fantastic. This was a waste of my 1 hour and 21 minutes and 6 seconds. All right, let's move on to this main event. This match was nothing special. It was very short, like all the other matches. Go figure. We would see Ric Flair make a run-in, but Sid would counter him and fight him off, as well as Luger. Liz would then package the baseball bat as Sid focuses on Luger, about ready to deliver a power bomb when Luger fuck it, he's Luger. He's always been a Luger. Shut up. Luger would nail Sid in the knee for the disqualification. Your winner via disqualification, Sid Vicious. Post-match, we would see Team Package beat down Sid as we cut to the backstage area with Jeff Jarrett and the Harris Twins watching on, stating that they want some of Sid as they leave the dressing room to make their way to the ring. Go back to the beatdown. Flair and Luger continue to beat down on Sid. Then when the cameras cut back to the backstage areas, the NWO, Jarrett and the Harris boys, are confronted by referee Mickey J and security who try to stop them from making their way out to the ring. But referee Mickey J would eat a guitar shot from Jeff Jarrett to close out the show. Oh, boy. This was a really bad show. This what perfectly embodies WCW, what they represented during this time period. They were creatively lost without any real direction, just throwing mud at the wall to seeing if it sticks. I personally would not recommend this show to anyone, and the fact that you, my listeners, chose this episode must be some kind of sick prank on me. This is a thumbs all the way down. Oh, man. I don't know if I might just remove Thunder from all the future polls, I'll be honest with you. But if you go in the polls right now, I got a pay-per-view poll up for the month of March. Which pay-per-view would you like for us to recap, review on a future episode of Kicking Out at 2 next month? It's either ECW Living Dangerously 2000, which saw Dusty Rhodes take on Steve Corino in a Texas Bull Rope match, and the infamous New Jack scaffold incident that almost killed the man. From Danbury, Connecticut, by the way. Or would you like us to recap the WCW Uncensored 2000 pay-per-view, which saw Sid Vicious take on Jeff Jarrett for the world title for the 8,000th time, as well as Hulk Hogan versus Ric Flair in a Yappa Pie strap match. I don't know what the fuck a Yappa Pie strap match is, but if you vote for it, I'm going to find out, and so will you. So be on the lookout. Find that in the polls over on Twitter and on Facebook. You can check that out. Vote. And thank you all for indulging me. Thank you all for choosing this topic. Thank you all for wasting 1 hour, 21 minutes, and 6 seconds of my time as I watch this and recap this for all of you. On our next episode, though, it won't be a waste of time because I'm really looking forward to this one. It's going to be No Way Out 2000 recap, headlined by Triple H versus Cactus Jack for the WWF Championship with Cactus Jack's career on the line. This was the last pay-per-view before WrestleMania 2000. This took place in my hometown of Hartford, Connecticut. 25 years ago, a 17-year-old Dave Rosenbluth was in attendance for his very first WWF wrestling pay-per-view. So got a lot of stories to share regarding that, as well as the rest of that card. We also saw The Rock and The Big Show take on each other to determine the right to see who faces the champion at WrestleMania. The New Age Outlaws would take on the Dudley Boys for the WWF Tag Team Championship. Kurt Angle and Chris Jericho would meet for the Intercontinental Championship. We would also see the Radicals, Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, and Perry Saturn take on Rikishi and Too Cool. X-Pac would take on Kane. Mark Henry versus Viscera. Taz versus the Big Boss Man. Edge and Christian versus the Hardys, and much more on a loaded WWF No Way Out 2000 card. So be on the lookout for that next episode right here on Kicking Out at 2. And with that being said, it's officially about that time we put this one down for the 1, 2, 3 count. Thank fucking God. And we'll see you all next time.